she fell in love with this really dashing, much younger French poet. I dedicated this book to my daughter, and I was going to say to my beloved daughter, Sophie, watch out for French poets. And the thing is, when you first have a relationship like that, it's the younger person who has extra power because they're fit and, all that sort of stuff. But once the relationship goes on for a little while, it switches. So this young poet was saying, look, I've done these lovely love poems to you. And she said, oh, that's good. She had lived with Voltaire for 10 years. Yeah. He was the greatest writer in Europe. And then he said, oh, maybe we can go from this small rural place where we are, maybe into Paris. She and Voltaire had been like the pride of Paris. They had a beautiful house at one point on the Ile Saint-Louis. And he realized he was being treated poorly. So he did a terrible thing. He did two terrible things. One, as I mentioned, he wrote her some beautiful love poetry, and it really is great. I love translating it. I lived in France, so I could translate it. Mm-hmm. It's like, the sun upon your bare arm in the morning, my delight is more fresh than the newest, blah, 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 the way French people do. Yeah. Turned out, she found out later, he was recycling his love poems. He had done the exact same poem to another woman 2 years before. Schmuck. But then anyways, later, when she was in her 40s and he was maybe around 30, she got pregnant. And at that time, sadly, it was a death sentence. She knew women who got pregnant later on almost always had, because of the poor medicine of the time, now it's not necessarily any big deal. Yeah. She knew it was really terrible. And she was doing, and he sort of left her. What's nice is she came back with Voltaire. Mm-hmm. Their love, in a sense, had become a friendship. Mm-hmm. And they just had this beautiful sharing in those last few months. And she, her pregnancy went well, but she was really worried about what was going to happen. And to make it even worse, she was working on a major translation and reinterpretation of Isaac Newton's work. Newton had written mostly in Latin, the important stuff. She was translating into French, which was the big language on the continent, and developing some of the ideas. She was really a crucial intermediary between the science from the generation before her to the science even 2 or 3 generations later. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard, complex work. And Voltaire said she wasn't angry, thinking that she was going to die, but she was just sad to feel she would have to leave before she was ready. And like 3 months left, 2 months left, 1 month left, and indeed she died a few days after giving birth. Mm. Voltaire was just broken. He used to wander around his house at night, just calling out for his Emily, his leading star. And he was especially broken because he was guilty. Mm-hmm. He had sort of driven her away by his weak ego. On the other hand, his great book, many of his works afterwards were either dedicated to her, or if not dedicated to her, he discussed her very much in his writing, and she motivated him from the afterlife. And her writings themselves, she wrote a book called On Happiness, which was written when many of us write books like that, when she was really sad, mm-hmm. after Voltaire and before the French poet, and I recommend it.